Alrighty, so I'll get us started and then we'll just jump straight into it.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Okay, hello and welcome to the Filmmakers podcast. Today, we are very excited to have with us a true Hollywood legend. He has written classics such as Gremlins and The Goonies. He's directed all-time greats including Home Alone, Miss Doubtfire, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Not only that, but he's produced some of Hollywood's best-loved films, a list too long to mention. Welcome to the Filmmakers podcast, Christopher Colombus.
Hello.
Very, very excited to have you with us, Christopher, to talk all things filmmaking.
Thank you.
And of course, your new film, The Thursday Murder Club.
Thank you. I'm very excited to talk about it.
Now, for those who maybe haven't read the book and not familiar with the film, can you just give us a quick breakdown of what The Thursday Murder Club is about?
Well, the first Thursday Murder Club really appealed to me. I fell in love with Richard Osman's book because it dealt with four people who potentially would not have met each other in the outside world. They come from all different backgrounds. And they come to Cooper's Chase, a retirement community, and become very close friends. But I love thematically, this was different than most murder mysteries. Most murder mysteries tend to be cold, procedural, or over the top and panto-like, for lack of a better word. And in this particular situation, I love the idea that these four people who are looking at the twilight years of their lives potentially can feel relevant again, can feel like they can make a difference, which is a rarity among senior citizens. And I really thematically jumped into that. That's really what got me involved. And the fact that the book and the film were so hysterically funny and deeply emotional. So all of those things combined to make me really want to direct the film.
Yeah, it is most people, when they watch these whodunits, they're ex-this, ex-military, ex-police, but to have ordinary people, it's a lovely little touch, yeah.
Well, yeah. Maybe all but one.
All but one, yes.
Indeed. Yes.
I mean, it's got it all, Christopher. It's got the charm, the heart, the soul, and obviously the comedy. And I've noticed with your films, you always add this sprinkling of magic. I don't know what I would define it as, but it feels grounded, but it feels like you're taking us to another world. Mm-hmm. Do you know what that is that you're doing?
I wish I did. I mean, I wish I could define if that works. That's fantastic. But for me, it was, I looked at Cooper's Chase, which is the retirement community in the film, sort of like, in an odd way, like Hogwarts, because Hogwarts, at the time, we designed the look and the feel of Hogwarts sort of as this wish fulfillment place where you know, if you're 11 years old and you're accepted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, it's this remarkable place to be and a dream come true. In terms of Cooper's Chase, it's really unlike most retirement communities in the world. It's not dreary, it's not depressing, sort of filled with hope. And I think we designed the sort of place that you sort of want to spend a few weeks, even if you're in your 30s or 40s, because it's filled with life.
Sign me up, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I like the look of that place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it did feel like that when those wide shots. You thought, oh, actually, it's really attractive. The dining area, it didn't feel like what you might consider as a retirement home.
Yeah, I mean, there are moments where you have to remind people. There's a hospice section, and there are those moments that there is that sense, which I always love, no matter what film I'm doing, that there's this darkness. There is a sense that death, whether it's a murder or whether it's the potential, whether you're facing your own mortality, there is that sense that death is lurking around the corner at some point. So that was always an interesting element for me.
Yes, the way she says, I think she asked her, is she still alive? And the lady that was helping them with their investigations, but she's now in the hospice, and everyone understands what that means.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone goes somber. And then the nice little scene with her husband, beautiful, ostentatious place, but then he's forgetting his memory. It's always there, but you can still reach at life and still claw back. It's really nice.
It was interesting because we designed each of the flats. You called it an ostentatious place, and we designed the flats as an extension of people's characters. So that was one of the wonderful things about which Richard Osman wrote, is that these characters were so filled with life and so specific and distinctive that their flats represented that. And interestingly, Elizabeth's flat, at some point, I don't want to spoil the film, but at some point in the film, there's about 15 people show up in that flat. So we actually had to design a bigger flat. It's almost like doing a bigger stage when you're doing a play. We had to accommodate all of these people coming in at the end of the film. So there were reasons for all of that. It's
very disappointed. You're telling me this is not a real place I can sign myself up. Just when I was looking forward to my old age.
Yeah, indeed. Obviously, a lot of our listeners are filmmakers and writers. We know that you started in the writing space.
Yeah.
And I guess a lot of indie filmmakers often have to write their own scripts from the start. They can't find development funds. And I just wondered, for you, how you felt your writing start and your writing sort of beginnings affected your directing career in terms of what skills or ways of thinking it gave you?
Yeah, it was a pretty specific thing. I was at NYU Film School, so I was there when I was going to school there. The world of independent film was sort of, it didn't really exist. Independent film, there were films that were made independently or inexpensively, but it wasn't, there was no Sundance Film Festival. So really, for up-and-coming filmmakers, we were taught that the only way to really become a director, the quickest way to become a director, was to write your own scripts. So immediate, and it's, I came from both of my parents were factory workers. So for me, I had no idea how to get in the industry, and I had no money. I had no means. So writing a screenplay, having a notebook and a pen is probably the least expensive way to tell people how you're going to make a movie. So I still tell that, when I go back to NYU and talk to the kids or anything, I'm like, guys, you can make an independent film. Certainly Sean Baker made a few films ago, did something on an iPhone. So he shot a film on an iPhone. So you do have the resources, and it's much less expensive than it used to be. But writing a script is still the least expensive way and the best way to get people to notice you as a potential filmmaker.
Absolutely, yeah. You sometimes just pay for it with blood with writing. At least in my experience, it can be painful and time consuming, but when you get it right, it's so enjoyable.
It is, and it's you have to be self-disciplined because it is so fucking so boring. Because you're going into a room alone, and 90% of the time you have to say to your friends, I can't go to the baseball game with you. I can't go to the pub. I've got to write. And it's really cutting yourself off and spending that time. But once you've done that, once you take that initial 25 minutes, 30 minutes, if you're really into the script, you lose yourself into it. And that's the zone you want to get into, where you're actually watching the film as you're writing it.
100%.
Yeah, I listened to a thing, I think it was by Ozu, and Robert Bresson said something similar. And he said kind of writing is a kind of directing. That if you're not able to get on a film set regularly, sitting there and going into that world is a kind of way of fake directing, but on your own. I thought that was
100% true. I completely agree with that. And that's because you're visualizing every moment of everything you're planning to shoot. I can't, it's difficult for me to think about directors, and there are great directors who don't write, but at the same time, it's just so handy in terms of being on the set and an actor says to you, this line is terrible. Can you come up with something else? Well, I don't need a writer there to come up with. I'll come up with 4 or 5 things. They may hate them, but at least I can do it. I can help.
I wanted to ask actually about that. So obviously you're a very accomplished writer and director, but from what I understand, you don't often direct your own scripts. Is that a conscious choice, or is that just the way the Hollywood cookie crumbles?
I mean, I tend not to, and it's not really because I want credit, but I tend to either spend a lot of time right before production rewriting, or rewriting a lot through rehearsals when we're working with the actors. Rehearsals are basically in a room kind of like this with all the actors sitting around reading the material, and then giving the actors sort of the freedom to say, I can't really say a line. I feel uncomfortable saying a line this way. I feel uncomfortable. What if I did it this way? And when they start to feel that sort of sense of trust between all of us, then by the time they get to the set, they can contribute. So by not being an initial writer, I feel that I'm sort of writing the entire time. And on this film, I had the advantage of having Richard Osman, who I could call the night, I'd get home at night from shooting and I'd look at the next day's scene and I would be sort of like, it's not really working. I need some, and I'd call Richard and I'd text him the scene, and then he would come back with pages of ideas. Now that's a little tough for the actors who are spending the night learning the scene, but they understood that that's basically how we're working. So essentially, to answer your question, I'm writing constantly, whether I'm writing with Richard or I'm writing myself. Even if it's not your original script, you are still actively working as a writer as you're working as a director.
That's very interesting. So on a practical level, you're there with the FDX file up in the rehearsal room and you're literally typing yourself, or is
not
a writer
with the
with
FDX file in the rehearsal room? In the rehearsal room, it's purely the script and writing and handwriting. Because for me, That's the connective tissue. I know it sounds boring, but I need to have the pen to paper to start it, and then I can get to the FDX file eventually.
Certainly. But you're the one physically doing the writing. You're not then feeding notes to a writer who put them in.
Only if I need. I mean, Katie Brand was very helpful as well. And Katie, sometimes if I had a slew of notes from a rehearsal and I had to do 5 other meetings, I could call Katie and say, can you implement these notes? Yeah.
Lovely. Amazing.
So I noticed you are producing on this.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to be easy, is it? Producing and directing on a film of this scale. I mean, Francis and I have both taken on both roles, but doing them at the same time, for me, has always been a challenge. How do you find that?
On a bigger budget, because we can do it, $500K, $1 million, but for something like that, to produce and direct us,
It's I had a terrific co-producer, Jennifer Todd, and for me, part of producing is part of directing. It's interesting. It depends on how. Prior to this, I had produced Nosferatu. So on Nosferatu, I was basically there with my co-producer, Eleanor, and we were producing the whole time, which essentially sometimes if you're a director means long periods of not doing anything. So we're on the set to support the director. But there are times when you're in the middle of production that you go an hour or two, and as a producer, you're just helping the director move along, but there's plenty of time to do both. I've always found that it's in pre-production where it gets a little ropey, where you're in a situation where you have to deal with budget and those sorts of things. But if you have someone you trust as your co-producer, it makes your job much easier.
Yeah, we wanted to ask you a bit about that, and Spielberg and Amblin. You've had a long relationship with them, but the Eggers thing, absolutely amazing. I think many independent filmmakers went, wow. Someone like, Chris Columbus is friends, basically, kind of a mentor with Robert Eggers and indie, it felt really refreshing. It felt, it boosted our confidence that, those two worlds can come together in that way through the directors. I mean, I just wondered your experiences of that and what you enjoy about collaborating with someone like Robert and that kind of indie space and that studio space coming together. Just a bit of conversation about that.
Yeah, I mean, that takes up most of my life these days. This is not that directing is almost a hobby, but for me, Maiden Voyage Pictures, which is our sort of independent film studio. It's a film studio. There's 2 of us, and we work out of a room. We don't even have an office.
That's a studio.
Don't
let anyone tell you otherwise.
So that we've been around for over 10 years. This is our 14th film, even though it's not an independent film.
Wow.
But at the same time, the goal was to help filmmakers, young filmmakers, sometimes aren't so young, they're in their 40s or something, to direct their first film. And not only help them find financing, that's a bit of it, but mostly to protect them from the studios or the financiers who could become, for lack of a better word, annoying or problematic in terms of creative input. I believe that the director and the writer, they need to see their vision through. So what we can do as producers is protect them and help them. For me, it's always when working with someone like Robert Eggers or Sean Hayter. We did Toluta with Sean Hayter. We did a film with Jeremy Jasper, which I'm really proud of, called Patty Cakes. And we just are in there for the directors. If someone comes in with a stupid idea, we will say, leave the director alone, let them do their thing. And I think Rob and I, immediately from The Witch, we just connected as filmmakers. Maybe I don't particularly I certainly don't work in the style of Robert Eggers, and Robert Eggers doesn't work in the style of me, but we can bounce ideas off of each other, and we have a shared love of film. And that's sort of where that happens. And also, I feel that directors who are sort of in my, who've been doing it for 30 some years like I have and are my age, you need to sort of connect with younger directors. You don't want to be the old guy saying, in my day, kid, this is the way we did it, because your day is gone. Now what you have to do is embrace youth and learn from them. So I really set aside my writing and directing career when I was working on Nosferatu. Literally 24 hours a day, I was devoted to Nosferatu. And being on that set and watching Rob work, I learned a few things. And I took those technical things with me and brought them to the Thursday Murder Club. And it's just being inspired by those kinds of people is extremely important. And most directors, it's either their ego won't let them do it, or that they feel that they know everything, and no one knows everything. I know probably more than I did when I started, just because of my relationship with those younger directors. And that's really been invaluable.
That's amazing. Yeah. Just up the road from here, there's Royal College of Art. There's a hanging room where Constable and Turner would every year they'd put all their paintings up, and all these great artists would come and they would look. Hundreds of paintings. And it feels a bit like that. Even though Constable and Turner are a million miles apart, there's something they shared about this hunger for it, and they learned from each other in terms of artists. And it just sounds like directorially, it's the same thing. It's amazing.
Well, it's just the fact that you love, on paper, we made jokes about Nosferatu from the director of Home Alone and The Witch. We're bringing you Nosferatu, two completely different movies. But at the same time, we share a love of all film and all genres. Just because you don't make those particular kind of films doesn't mean you don't love them and want to support them. I want to see them, there's no way, shape, or form I could force myself to try to do a film in the style of Robert Eggers, but it would never be part of who I am. Yet I can learn so much from him.
I would like to say I would actually sign up to watch that film if you guys co-direct something. Please. So just taking us back a little bit before we come back to the Thursday Murder Club, but you have worked with Spielberg for a little while, if I'm correct. So can you tell us a little bit about that relationship, how it started, and now working with Amblin on the Thursday Murder Club?
It's an interesting sort of progression, because Steven is really responsible for my career as a director and a writer. Oh, and as a result of that, we did 3 films together: Young Sherlock Holmes, Goonies, and Gremlins. And then I sort of, Steven wasn't involved. Although Steven was involved in me sort of getting my first directing job, because Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was running Disney at the time, was looking for a director for Adventures in Babysitting. And Steven suggested that he should go with me. So Steven's been in there in my corner all those years. And then I sort of went off and did my thing. Steven was doing his thing. And then we reunited again on The Help. In 2011, we both produced that, but I'd never directed a movie for Steven. So I'd never been the director on a Steven Spielberg production. And that was daunting. Even after all these years, I was terrified. And there was one day when Steven was coming to the set, and I thought, what if I fuck up? What if I'm not the director he thought I was going to be? I mean, he was seeing dailies and rushes, and he was loving what he was seeing, but I didn't know what to expect when he came to the set. And he was so incredibly supportive, and he brought out his iPhone and started to do behind the scenes footage. He started to record behind the scenes footage. And it was surreal. Behind me is Steven Spielberg filming me saying action. And then I got home that night and he was texting me all these videos. And I thought, for Steven, it's the same as it is for me, and probably, hopefully, all other filmmakers who've worked for some time, which is you still love film. You still love the process, and it never gets old. We do say, us directors, we say, there's nowhere else we'd rather be but on a movie set. And it's truly, after so many years, you feel the most comfortable on a set,
Yeah, that's an amazing anecdote. And I think this idea of, you tend to think, okay, who directorially would have my back? Actually, oftentimes it's other filmmakers, other directors who, as you said, understand and want to protect. Nothing wrong with producers and studio execs, but we understand each other sometimes in a way that's slightly better. I remember Sidney Lumet saying that before he started a movie, he would watch, all the movies in that genre. Midnight Express, he'd watch a bunch of films. I just wondered, in terms of your process, do you tend to absorb other films in the whodunit suspense genre, or were you trying to kind of hive yourself off from that? And how did you kind of...
Well, I thought that, for me, I learned, it's interesting you mentioned Sidney Lumet. The directors that I admire are the directors that inspired me when I was a kid. So those were the 70s film directors. So all the people say, what are your favorite films? They don't expect me to refer to Dog Day Afternoon and Serpico and The Godfather and The Deer Hunter and all the films. And what do those films have in common? Well, they have in common these incredibly beautiful naturalistic performances. So for me, it's not really about watching a whodunit or, I sometimes get very frustrated with certain, not genre films, but newer films where the performances are sort of not the first thing on the director's mind.
Yes.
And for me, those films, particularly the films of Sidney Lumet, were about the performances and the actors and embracing your actors and actually loving your actors. And that's what I sort of bring to every film. It's not really the genre as much as just watching how a director gets these performances out of people. I think for this film, I watch films that have nothing to do. I watched The Verdict,
yes,
with Paul Newman, just because I think it's Paul Newman's best performance. For pure charm, I always watch Richard Lester's A Hard Day's Night, which is probably my favorite film of all time.
Okay, wow, yeah.
For the pure Britishness of it. So I just take in as much as I can in terms of films that I love, not necessarily the same genre. Yeah.
Yeah. Really good answer. Yeah.
So before we just dive in, you mentioned the casting, which is absolutely fantastic. Before we jump into that, you mentioned the Britishness, right? As an American jumping into this, how did you find that? Obviously, you've lived here. We just had a quick conversation. You've lived in London for a little while.
Yeah.
But how do you tackle tapping into that other culture?
His favorite film is British, yes.
It's sort of really being a fan. And it goes back to when the films that sort of shaped me when I was a teenager were starting with, because you're a kid, but I was obsessed with Hammer horror films. Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing were my heroes. And then it went on to my obsession with music. The other thing I love more than anything is music. And for us in America, we called it the British invasion. But it really was bands like the Kinks and the Stones and the Beatles, particularly for me, really were sort of life-changing. And then I saw Hard Day's Night and I saw Help, and I was just sort of smitten with the whole British world. And continuing, then I started to follow the films of David Lean, and Great Expectations was an extraordinarily important film for me. The first 20 minutes really fueled how I was going to direct Home Alone, because Great Expectations was told through an eye of a child, the beginning of it. And that's what I did with Home Alone. So the Britishness of it all was part of, who I was as a fan. So when I came here to do Potter, my goal was to preserve the Britishness of the material. And nothing was more frustrating than to read the Americanized versions of the Potter books, because they would remove all of the, jumper became sweater, trainers became sneakers. And it was annoying, because I realized that my kids, when they were reading the British versions, really enjoyed trying to find out what these words meant. And
Right.
it just made the experience much more, it was a deeper experience. So that's what I wanted to do with Potter. And in Potter, we cast, J.K. Rowling at the time was very much adamant, and I agreed with her 100% that we needed to cast all British actors. So even I had friends like Robin Williams who wanted to be in the Potter films. And I said, no, it's an all British cast. Now, things have changed over the last 20 years where a lot of Brits, as you well know, come to America and work on television and do American accents. And we don't seem to complain about that because the actors are so good. So maybe I'd feel a little differently. Although in Thursday Murder Club, I came to it and wanted to hire all British actors. So I just feel that there is that I have a sense of kinship to this country. I love the crews. I love the actors. I particularly love the actors because there's a sense of professionalism that I saw on Potter that extends to this, which is everyone at the time was doing television, theater, and film. And this just made them much more professional actors and better actors.
This idea of, using Great Expectations, obviously because of this child-led thing and how that influence, I think it underpins your point for filmmakers listening that, you shouldn't say, well, I do this sort of genre. Cinema is cinema. There's so much about the way the whole movie and concept is handled that can teach you, even if it's not in the genre.
Right.
And something as epic as Great Expectations, you can feel that in Harry Potter. You can feel this robustness and this un-Americanized Englishness, which you've really kind of gone for. And I think that's a testament. We need to learn from each other in different genres. In terms of the actors, it's a massive ensemble cast. All the British greats, who's who. And obviously there's lots of different styles, different things that ways they like to be directed and so on. Did you have a system or a way of thinking to navigate those different styles, or was it they were all kind of happy to drink from the same pot, as it were? Because some people are very, well, leave me to my work. I know the lines and and others want to have deep discussions about the story And just for our filmmakers, how does one as a director navigate those different needs from actors?
I think it was a matter of, the tone was sort of set at the first rehearsal, which was basically us reading through the script in a room with everyone. And I think Helen Mirren was probably responsible, as well as myself, for setting the tone of collaboration and openness, which means that not basically throw away your preconception of what we're about to do, but it's essentially come into this space and feel trusted and welcome, which meant that people like for instance, Sir Ben Kingsley came into the first rehearsal and said, "I hope you're not changing anything with the script, because I've memorized everything." He's memorized the entire script top to bottom, which is what he does. And I said, "Well, unfortunately, we tend to change everything as we move along."
Yeah.
And he would tell you himself, as he started to get through the process, by the time we got to probably the last 20% of the film, he had to deliver a eulogy at the end of the film. And 2 days prior to that, he came into my office and said, "I've rewritten the eulogy. I hope, you respond to some of it." And he read me what he rewrote. And I said, "Let's shoot that." And that's what's in the film. So he understood that's how we work, that we want contributions from actors. Daniel Mays, there's a scene in the film where he is getting frustrated with the Thursday Murder Club, and he barges in. They've just found the body in the cemetery. He barges in and he tells them to stop interfering. But a lot of that dialogue, Danny wrote the night before.
Wow.
And he read it to me, and I said, "Yes, let's insert that. Let's insert that." So it's that sort of spirit of collaboration that I encourage, And obviously, if it's not going to work for the film, I don't want it in the film. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I want the actors to feel like they're a part of it.
He was absolutely brilliant. I forget what he called it. Was it the Tuesday Killing Club or something? Tuesday Killing Society. Was it?
The Tuesday Killing Society.
Yeah.
And that whole scene where he's turning up your earphones was your hearing aids, was all Danny came up with that whole spiel. That was it.
Yeah. So
Tuesday Death Society. Yeah,
Tuesday Death Society. That was the one. So in terms of rehearsals, then how do you approach that? Do you get much time on a film like this? Because obviously a lot of time we're scrabbling with the actors. We don't have much time when we're filmmakers ourselves. And that's a constant battle, something I would love to do. When you're working with these, top caliber cast, do you have more time that you can dedicate towards rehearsals?
Rehearsals for me are not going onto a marked sort of stage, and I like to rehearse the night before. So if the actors are willing to come in after we wrap, and because the stage is built, the set is ready, as opposed to taping it out on the floor, so I can actually block the scene with the actors, know where we're going to put the camera first thing in the morning, and that's advantageous.
Yes. Yeah.
Blocking a scene 3 months before you shoot it, to me, is a waste of time. And it also takes away from the potential spontaneity of what may happen on the day. But if you're doing it the night before, it preps people and puts them in a state of mind that they can still improvise and still feel free. So the rehearsal process prior to building the sets was really basically a reading process, getting through the script and finding those places that we wanted to improve upon. It was almost a rewriting process as opposed to rehearsal process.
Yes, you're finding it. I remember listening to Spielberg saying, like, if you think that the script that you end up with on day one is the final thing, then you're dead. You have to have this mindset of openness and so on. For a lot of independent filmmakers, cobbling bits of money, pre-sales, tax, working with a Netflix, working with an Amblin is like, wow, a bit of a holy grail. In terms of working with them, how is that experience? Do you find it conducive towards the filmmaker? We've heard lots of positive things about Netflix being very pro filmmaker, but how does that differ from maybe the independent space? And then in any way, if it does,
Well, for this particular film, it's different on every film, but they've given us a small theatrical release. So we have a week here in the UK, which is fantastic because the film was designed as a cinematic experience. Even though you're ending up on a streaming service, it's in my DNA. I'm going to make a film that plays in theaters. And when you see the film in a theater with a group of people, you realize, this was totally made with love as a theatrical experience.
Yes.
So regardless of where it ends up, all films end up on television. even Lawrence of Arabia ended up on television. And the result is make it for the cinema, even if you know you're heading for streaming. The great thing about Netflix, and there were a lot of studios who put up their hand and wanted to make the Thursday Murder Club. But the problem is, because of the nature of the film business right now, because Thursday Murder Club is not based on a superhero novel or not based on an IP that existed 20 years ago, we are in a situation where they only wanted to give us a specific amount of money for the budget.
Yes.
Netflix understood, and they gave us the proper budget for the movie, which meant I could get the cast I wanted, I could build the sets that I wanted, and basically make the film that would be representative of Richard Osman's book. I could have done it on a smaller level with it, but the entire cast would have been different. The sets would have been different. We probably would have shot in more locations, but my mind does work like that. But Netflix came through and essentially gives you the budget to make a movie that most studios will not make theatrically these days, because it's for older people. Basically, it's a performance piece. It's dialogue for 95% of the film. And that's not Deadpool Wolverine.
Yes.
It's not, I personally, you have to champion all original filmmaking that is working in a theater. For instance, Sinners. Sinners was a movie that is a completely original idea that was extraordinarily popular and successful. And I respond to that. I love when a big original film does well in the theaters. So anyway, Netflix is a wonderful place to make films that a lot of people won't make.
Yeah, it's amazing that theatrical element is something that every independent filmmaker wants. So to hear that Netflix are willing for the right thing is, it's great. It's fantastic.
So thank you, Christopher. It's been absolutely amazing talking to you. And everyone tune in and watch the Thursday Murder Club on Netflix.
Thank you, guys. I could talk to you all day.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Cheers. So I'll just do a little intro and then we'll just dive in and ask you some questions. So that's your handheld mic there. Fantastic. Yes.
You want hot or hot tea?
Nice cup of tea. Right, let's get this up.
Yes, sure.
Okay, all good?
All good, yeah. Yes.
Hello and welcome to the Filmmakers Podcast. Today we have with us an acting great, an Oscar winner who's appeared in countless movies including Gandhi, Schindler's List, Sexy Beast, Hugo, Iron Man 3, and so many more. It is, of course, the one and only Sir Ben Kingsley.
Lovely to be here, thank you.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Today we're diving into filmmaking and acting. Those are the people who kind of listen to our podcast.
Great.
And they're going to be ravenous to hear about the Thursday Murder Club. You play Ibrahim, a retired psychiatrist who teams up with 3 fellow retirees to unravel a surprising murder in their retirement village. Amazing role. A lot of actors who are listening are thinking, how do I pick a role? How do I select a role? And we just thought, with all the beautiful films with Gandhi and Oscar nomination, and The House of Sand and Fog, amazing performances and a masterclass in acting. To hear from you how you think, how you go about picking a role, over the time, has it been mainly the script or the relationship with the director or unpacking the character? Are there things that you tend to gravitate towards when you're choosing a role?
That's a huge question. I don't honestly have a strategy to my career. In other words, I don't say to God or myself or the universe what I want to do next. It often comes as a complete surprise, but I choose to really address myself to your question. I try and choose if a script, let's say a script lands in front of me, and I choose if it's a combination of recognition and curiosity. If I feel that there's something about the character that I know, and there's also something about the character that I want to learn. So that combination of recognition and curiosity. The bizarre thing, for example, about being invited to play certain roles that are a total surprise and involve me taking huge risks. Thank goodness, I love to take risks. Was when Don Logan of Sexy Beast arrived at me and to me, and 1 page, 2 pages in, I said to myself, I know you, and I know your tricks, and I know what you're up to. I was actually very fond of Don, and during the filming, I realized why I was so fond of Don and why I cared for him was that he was an abused child who'd gone on to be unhealed and therefore went on to abuse others. And as soon as I found that link, it's not always the case. The writing has to be superb. You see, I was brought up on Shakespeare. I joined the Royal Shakespeare Company in my 20s.
Yes.
And it was only my 3rd job. And I worked with maestros on the greatest dramatic literature ever written. I don't care what anybody says.
Yes.
He's the governor.
100.
And to cut my teeth on that, and to hone my skills on that gymnasium, that trapeze, that ramp, that torture rack that is playing Shakespeare. It's very hard. I don't think I could have walked onto the set of Gandhi without playing and being acquainted with Shakespeare's great characters who do examine a person isolated on the horizon who has to sort out the world.
Yes.
Hamlet, for example, O cursed spite, the time is out of joint.
Yes.
O cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right. That is, I'm sure, how Gandhiji felt.
Yes.
Why me?
Yes.
Why am I responsible for the liberation of 600,000? That was the population then. So it's the journey is blessed. And I hope that my work on stage with those beautiful directors at the Royal Shakespeare Company have enabled me to make choices when I'm invited to make choices and to sustain me throughout my career. I've already talked far too much.
No, this idea of this having this benchmark of greatness and that going through your career and being able to sort of use that as a yardstick to go, how does what I'm about to do compare?
Absolutely.
This is very important for actors to hear that they need to work with the greats. Yeah, it's good.
The play Othello is a great play. I've played Othello, but Don Logan is my Iago. Eaten up with envy, eaten up with jealousy. My favorite line, I'm sorry to concentrate on Sexy Beast, but it's the greatest acting exercise ever and a beautifully written screenplay. And Don Logan's famous, I love this line, it's tragic. I shout to my friend in the kitchen, I don't want you to be happy. Why should I? What a terrible thing to say. What a terrible thing to say. But that is the quintessential. That is Don. Why should I be? I don't want you to be happy. Why should I? That's the abused, bruised soul who's outlawed happiness and is disruptive.
Yes.
Absolutely, Ben. I mean,
that's beautiful.
So Ben, Sexy Beast is one of my favorite films, and that character is just absolutely iconic. So you mentioned about this intersection, this sweet spot between the empathy and something you understood about the character, but also wanting to discover something new. You play Ibrahim in the film. What was it that attracted you to this role? What was that sweet spot that you uncovered?
The sweet spot is that he is, I'm not so sure he's a retired psychiatrist. I think he always will be. That is in his DNA. Through his youth, his childhood, through his whole life, he has learned to be a healer. And to him, listening and being attentive to the other, there's the empathy. He forensically tries to recognize with whom he is and how to listen to them and therefore how to heal them. And that for me struck a lovely note. Yeah, the healer.
That is beautiful. Yes. So this is the idea. So you're finding something that's familiar, and then finding space to be able to expand and learn something new about that kind of character. We were just speaking before to the director, and he was talking about them having a much more improvisational style. Playing with the lines, playing with the dialogue.
Yes, how was that, Sir Ben? We heard that the lines would be changing quite a lot. Obviously, you've come from a theatrical background. Was that challenging? How did you deal with that as an actor?
My particular lines hardly changed because I find I get a great joy into bringing what's on the page to life, and I don't that keen on adjusting what's on the page. Although I did offer some changes at the funeral when I delivered that eulogy. I did offer some, but those I think were the only changes I offered. I am pretty well wedded to what's on the page. It's my training from ages ago that's my job to bring that to life.
And in terms of those changes, was it the style of Christopher Columbus's kind of improvisation, or was it what inspired you to say, you know what, I think we can make this a bit stronger or move it here or there?
What inspired me was that I invented a backstory for Ibrahim to design his environment, his apartment, which I was given the opportunity to do, and also to understand why he's a psychiatrist, why he's a healer, why he's such a great listener. And my backstory I found immensely sustaining. And in that speech, I included the fact that he has been somewhat of an exile, and has found an exile that finds a home. And that was, I like to put it in, I like to condense things into a little phrase that I can sort of put into my pocket as an actor and take it onto the film set. And I think with you two gentlemen, I've probably arrived at my little phrase just now, which is an exile who finds a home.
Isn't that beautiful? Because the film, in some way, might be considered the same. You know, people who are going to a care home.
Absolutely.
They've had a rich life, children, but they're also kind of coming from those communities into a new community, and they're kind of exiles in a way, finding a new home. Yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah.
I think that's perfectly put. I think that to feel exiled from life, it must be a pretty dreadful feeling. And to convert that exile, or to deny that exile, to refuse to be exiled, and create a home for yourself is a wonderful exercise, and a necessary exercise too.
That's beautiful. Yeah. To be another time, but we've got lots of questions to ask, but we'll try and get them quickly.
Of course.
In terms of whodunits and murder mysteries, there can be a cadence. You know, when the audience watches, they know, oh yeah, you know, they'll get the person, and you know, it's not, you know, these 5 suspects, and there are kind of mechanics which underpin these sorts of movies, which people like, and same with the books. I wondered kind of how conscious you are about those in terms of when you're playing. Are you trying to make sure you don't reveal too much? Are you trying to send the audience down a blind alley? Do you think in those terms, or are you just thinking scene by scene, beat by beat?
I think it's a combination of both. I know that Richard Attenborough had a wonderful way of describing the difference between theatre and film. He said, theatre is the integrity of the event. Film is the integrity of the moment.
Okay, very nice.
But on the film set with the right script, you have to play both at the same time. You have to know, you should be aware of what scene the director should be aware of what scene comes before and what scene comes after your particular moment that you grab between action and cut. There was a moment, I hope I'm not giving too much away, but there was a moment early on in the film, in the jigsaw room, looking at that map, that Ibrahim actually worked something out. Yeah. And I think the camera lingers long enough, just long enough to say, oh, Ibrahim's got it. And that I think, because I think what's lovely about these sleuth films and these mystery films is the audience loves to keep up. They're slightly competitive.
Yes.
You know, I'm going to get it before the person sitting next to me is going to get it. And that degree of audience participation in that genre is a tremendous asset to the filmmaker, because he knows that the storyteller, because he knows that the audience is participating, is leaning forward, wants to find out just as much as we want to find out too, as the sleuths.
Yes, very good
Absolutely.
answer.
And just to wrap up, Sir Ben, we have lots of actors listening to this podcast.
Yes, good.
Any pearls of wisdom? It's been a tough time in the industry for a lot of actors. in the last few years. Lots of stuff going on. Any pearls of wisdom that you could give to our actors?
I hope so. I hope so. But it can only be very subjective, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
But I think that if my subjective words can be translated into something that resonates with the actor, so be it. That would be wonderful. I see my tribal function as a storyteller.
Love that. And so true. That's how we all feel. There's not these divisions. We are all here. We're working towards a shared vision, and it's all about collaboration. Sir Ben, it's been an absolute privilege talking to you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks. Okay, that was amazing. Christopher Columbus, I thought it was so fascinating how he is connected into the independent space and what he said about, kind of the osmosis of the old and the new, the previous and the new coming together. I think that's great for us indie filmmakers to hear that, they want to work with us and there's this kind of kindred spirit between us.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think the industry always wants to try and put us in boxes, or at least that's how it can feel at times.
Yeah.
You're the guy that does this. You're the horror guy. You're the drama guy. You're the comedy guy. But actually, listening to Christopher just reaffirms we can do it all. Look at Spielberg. His work is so eclectic. Christopher Columbus. There's common themes that are in his work, but they're different. They're very, very different. So I think it's really useful to remember that when we're working on different projects and not to box ourselves in. If the industry is going to try and do it, fine, but let's at least just choose the projects that we are passionate about.
Exactly. And the way he mentioned great expectations and how that fed into Harry Potter. We've got to watch cinema. We've got to watch the modern stuff, maybe some of the older stuff, and how it all feeds into our appreciation of what we're doing. Maybe we're doing a modern horror, but maybe there's a film from the 60s in Paris that really resonates in some way. And just having that curative way of thinking, I think, is good for us as filmmakers to constantly absorb.
Yeah, and I'll really take away from what Christopher was saying. A lot of the greats, they're students of cinema. They don't just watch the recent films. They go back and they listen and they watch and they learn. And that's what makes them so good at what they do.
Yeah, it's a great mindset. It was fascinating to hear.
And we also had an Oscar winner, Sir Ben Kingsley. That was fantastic.
Yep, even the way he thinks about the questions, where he really answers them. Again, similarly to the way that Chris used Great Expectations, he's using Shakespeare. They have these solid 100% benchmarks, and then they gauge everything against that, and that's how they make great choices.
Absolutely. He's definitely opened up doors. He talked about the British invasion of actors. I mean, it's people like Sir Ben who have opened those doors because of their training and how professional they are. And, it's amazing to see that even when curveballs are thrown at him, whether the lines are changing, he's delivering time and time again. And he's a phenomenal actor. I could have talked about the film all day. And also Sexy Beast. I mean, Don Logan.
Yeah. What
a character. What an icon. What a joy it has been.
And when you're an actor as well, you're always thinking of what roles do I choose? And when you're young, you just choose everything. But this idea that he's looking for something familiar that he can bring, but also a little 10, 15, 20% of something new that he's going to learn and expand. So this is this nice kind of familiarity plus expansion. I liked that. That's a good actorial benchmark rule book to sort of stick by.
Absolutely.
That was fantastic. So we loved chatting to those people. We loved what we learned. And I think that you will love it too as you tune in and you enjoy listening to it. The film is out on the 28th of August on Netflix and in select theatres around that time. So look out for it in your local cinema or on Netflix.
Take care.
Peace.